Hi guys, welcome. Hope everyone is doing good and hope your preparation is on the right track. Now today on the 9th of November 2023, let us look at some of the important issues of the day. Now the climate change is making a lot of news. The reason is the upcoming COP28 that is set to happen in UAE, Dubai. Okay, so there is a lot of initiatives that keep coming up. There are a lot of terms that will keep coming up. So it is very pertinent that you keep a close eye on these terms as well as initiatives. Okay, so that is one thing that I wanted to tell. And the next is 100 more members to reach 2000 subscribers. So once that is reached, the TNT series will be unlocked. So again, a reminder to all of you to make sure to just tell all your friends to join the channel so that you reach the subscribers as soon as possible. Okay, with that, let us get back to the news in 30 minutes and let us look at some of the important issues on the 9th of November 2023. The first issue is Taiwan, a Malacca blockade and India's option. So this article is mainly talking regarding the international relations that are taking place in South China Sea. Okay, South China Sea is again making a lot of news. The reason is because China is becoming overly assertive. It's becoming overly assertive over Taiwan. Okay, it is building up a lot of naval strength around Taiwan. The second is China is also creating a lot of tensions with Philippines. Okay, it is creating a lot of tensions with Philippines over Scarborough Shoal. Okay, SHOAL, Shoal. All right, so this is a place that is disputed between China and Philippines. Okay, so these are the two issues that are happening in South China Sea. Now when such issue keeps happening, we know that South China Sea becomes the topic that can be asked in both prelims as well as mains. So first let us look at it from prelims perspective and then let us look at it from mains perspective. Okay, so talking from the prelims perspective, if you look at this image, all right, so this is how you have to always go to the atlas and get a spatial sense of the places that are in news. Okay, places in news is very important. As you saw last year, there were around 8 to 10 questions that have come directly from places in news, especially two match the followings. All right, which has not only given places in news but areas in conflict and regions that are associated with different countries. So you have to have a very good idea regarding international places in news. Okay, so now since South China Sea is in news, okay, now let us see first the countries that surround the South China Sea. Okay, so as I told you, take China, okay, and go in clockwise or anti-clockwise order. Okay, so if I take China, then you have Taiwan. See, this is the issue that is happening. Okay, the China is surrounding Taiwan with its naval strength and there are high probabilities that it can invade Taiwan because it feels that Taiwan is part of China as a as per the concept of one China policy. All right, the next is Taiwan, then you have Philippines, then you have Brunei. This part is Brunei. Okay, then you have Malaysia, then you have Vietnam. Okay, and you have Indonesia as well. Okay, you have Singapore as well. Okay, so these are some of the nations that border the South China Sea. Okay, and as you can see here, China's 9-dash line. Okay, China's 9-dash line is basically the line that it claims that it belongs, or it is the line up to which the China claims that it belongs to China's sovereignty. Okay, so this is one thing. So basically the point is you have to make sure that you look at these countries and develop a spatial sense. Okay, along with that, if you observe, look at this Paracel Island, Scarborough Shoal and Spratly Island. Okay, so these two are in news of late, these two. The reason is because Philippines is in conflict with China, okay, over these issues. All right, so you should have an idea about this as well. All right, now when they say shoal, that is SHOAL, it is just a sand bar, that is a shallow water with sand below it. Okay, so this is what is a shoal. All right, so Scarborough Shoal as well as Spratly Island are two disputed territories between Philippines and China. Okay, so I hope you got the spatial sense. Now, once you get to know this, one more image that I wanted you to see is the three important straits that are making a lot of news. Okay, one is Strait of Malacca. Okay, another is Sunda Strait, another is Lombok Strait. Okay, now if you look at this is Strait of Malacca. Okay, this is Sunda Strait and this is Lombok Strait. Okay, now they can give you, arrange it in north to south, arrange from east to west, so you should be ready for all those things. So that is the reason, just by knowing the strait will not help, seeing the atlas and developing spatial sense will help. Okay, they can ask you arrange the straits in ascending, in north to south or east to west, or they can just give you the islands of Indonesia. For example, if you take these, see Sumatra, Java, Bali, Borneo, Sulawesi, okay, and Makassar. Alright, so if they can tell you to arrange from east to west or north to south, you should be able to arrange it. Alright, so these are some of the places that are in use. Alright, however, the point I am trying to show you this map is the three straits: Malacca Strait, Sunda Strait and the Lombok Strait. Okay, so I hope you got the idea. Where is Lombok? Okay, this is a Lombok island. Okay, that's why it is known as Lombok Strait. Alright, so this is about, and this is Irian Jaya. Irian Jaya, that also belongs to Indonesia. So basically these are some of the islands of Indonesia as well. So not only did you see the straits, you also got an idea regarding all the islands, because Indonesia is the largest archipelago in the world. You should have an idea about these islands as well. All right, one more issue that is making news is the Kra Canal. Okay, basically Kra is a place in Thailand. Okay, and this is basically an isthmus. Okay, it is basically an isthmus. Isthmus means it is a narrow piece of land. Okay, it's a narrow piece of land that connects two land bodies. Okay, whereas strait, if you take a strait, then straits are narrow water bodies. Okay, there are narrow water inlets. These are narrow water inlets, okay, that connect two huge water bodies. Okay, so now coming back to Kra is an isthmus. The reason it is making news is China is now investing in Thailand in order to develop a land bridge. See, a land bridge is nothing but a roadway as well as railway. Okay, now if you build, it is aiming to build a land bridge. Okay, now along this, if you see this, if we build a land bridge here, okay, it connects, this side is Andaman Sea and this side is Gulf of Thailand. Okay, and look at this part is Malacca Strait. Malacca Strait is geostrategically very important, and because Malacca Strait is geostrategically very important, China's lifeline is dependent on Malacca Strait. The economic lifeline of China is Malacca Strait. Now, if the China develops this land bridge which will connect Gulf of Thailand with Andaman Sea, don't you think now China will have a second lifeline? Okay, this second lifeline is coming in the form of this Kra land bridge. Okay, Kra Canal is not being built. Okay, now what the Thailand government has told is they are planning, with the help of the Chinese investment, to build what they call as a land bridge that links Andaman Sea with the Gulf of Thailand. Okay, and this land bridge is known as Kra land bridge, as it plugs the isthmus of Kra connecting Gulf of Thailand with Andaman Sea. Okay, so overall these are some of the places in use. So I hope you have paused the video and looked at it, and please mark this in your atlas. So for more clarity, I am just going to show you the political map so that you see the countries a little more clearly. Okay, as you can see now, identify the Strait of Malacca. Look at this, it comes somewhere here. Okay, the next is the Sunda Strait, the next is the Lombok Strait. Okay, and the next is the Kra Canal. Kra Canal is not going to happen. However, the Kra land bridge is something that has been in the works, or that has been planned, that is going to happen in the future. Okay, so this is basically a Chinese investment. So these are some of the important facts that you should learn from prelims perspective. Okay, so if this is done, now let us move towards the mains perspective of the topic. The mains perspective is, what is India's stand? Okay, what is India's stand regarding South China Sea, or what are India's option, to be more clear, what are India's option when it comes to South China Sea? This analysis is what is important. Okay, the first one is, since South China Sea is a distant whatever blockade is happening in South China Sea is a distant blockade. Okay, that is the naval blockade that China is trying to do over the Pacific Ocean. This is a distant blockade. That is, it is not happening in the back doors of India. It is happening at a very far distance. Hence, what India can do is, India can only voice its concern via international law. It cannot voice its concern directly to China. It has to always challenge this particular stand of China via international law. So you have United Nations Convention on Law of Sea. India is also a signatory, as well as China is also a signatory. So this gives India an option to voice its concern via the international law on the doings of China, which is not in accordance to the spirit of international law. This is one thing. The second option that India has is, see, one, the trade or the Strait of Malacca. The Strait of Malacca is not only important for China. What we should understand is the Strait of Malacca is important even for India. It is an important trade line even for India. So this again makes India a part of the stakeholder in whatever events that turn out in the Strait of Malacca. That is the third thing. Second thing. The third is, see, this Strait of Malacca. The Strait of Malacca, it runs through a channel. It runs through a channel that is 500 miles. Okay, it is almost 500 miles. So if it is 500 miles, it involves different countries. So Indonesia, you have Malaysia, you have Thailand, you have Singapore. See, these are all some of the nations that are an important stakeholder of Strait of Malacca. Okay, now all these nations are ASEAN nations. Okay, and these ASEAN nations have a very close ties with China. All right, so it becomes incumbent upon ASEAN nations to make sure that China should not in any way hurt the economy of Southeast Asian nations. Correct. So now the responsibility more or less falls on ASEAN nations rather than India alone. That is the third point that I wanted to make. So one, it is a distance blockade. So India can fight via international law because it is not in India's backdoor. The second, Strait of Malacca itself is not only important for China as an economic lifeline, but it is also important to India as the economic lifeline. So India does become a part of its stakeholder. So India should not completely neglect it. The third is the Strait of Malacca runs across a channel of 500 miles that involves Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand and Singapore, which are part of ASEAN nations, and ASEAN nations now becomes responsible to make sure that China does not hurt the economy of Southeast Asian nations. The fourth is, see, what you should not forget is China is using the crude carriers. China is using the crude carriers across not Malacca Strait but Sunda Strait. Okay, to tell you the truth, it is using the the Sunda Strait, which is more deeper, and which allows more heavier vessels to move across it. Okay, so the attention is purely on Malacca Strait. However, what also should not be neglected is the Sunda Strait. That is one more caution that you should understand within the geopolitics of places or geopolitics of location. Sunda Strait is being neglected, which it should not be, because most of the energy carriers or crude carriers of China is moving through Sunda Strait. Okay. The fifth one, what China is trying to do is China is developing a huge onshore and floating, it is developing a huge onshore and floating strategic petroleum reserve. It is developing a huge strategic petroleum reserve. So it is what it is doing is it is using oceans. It is using oceans to store its backup crude oil. That's what it means. Okay, it's using oceans to store backup crude oil. Now this again can be used as an excuse for the Chinese aggression in the future. Okay, so if any Chinese military buildup or if any Chinese invasion takes place, then they can use this as an excuse to invade countries or create some type of skirmishes between the countries. Okay, so overall, if we have to analyze the South China Sea and the Malacca Strait, okay, basically what we are analyzing is the importance of Malacca Strait and how India and other nations should act over it. The first is coming from India's perspective. One, India cannot act directly with China because it's a distance blockade. The second is Strait of Malacca is as important to India as it is for China because it is also a stakeholder with it. The third is ASEAN nations and its role play a very important role. They have to take up the direct interactions and communication with China, and they should not depend upon other nations like Western countries or India. The fourth is focus should also be focused on Sunda Strait, not only on the Malacca Strait. And the last is China is making oceans as a backup for crude oil by storing strategic reserves inside them, which can be used as an excuse in the future in order to create disturbances or distortions amongst the nations that share the oceans along its coastline. Okay, so these are the 5 points or 5 perspectives what are India's option and what India can do in South China Sea. Okay, India cannot intervene directly. However, India as a global responsible nation and a voice for all the developing and underdeveloped countries can definitely use these 5 perspectives to put forth its view in the South China Sea. Okay, so this is the overall article. Okay, now what I have to tell is the article is actually given a negative connotation to what India can do. They are told about the limitations of what India can do. I have not focused it on that. I have changed the angle so that you can use it in your answers. So I have not shown it as limitations. I have just shown it as India's options. Okay, what all India can do regarding the South China Sea as well as the Strait of Malacca. Okay, however, South China Sea is making a lot of noise, so please make sure that you have enough content and enough clarity regarding the places that are in use, especially in South China Sea. I hope this was helpful. So the next issue that we will focus is the world will overshoot 2030 coal limit to tame warming by twice over. Okay, so what this article tells is, now we had emission targets. So basically, let me just give you a background. There is something called production gap report. Okay, there is something called production gap report. Production gap report. So this production gap report identifies one, production of fossil fuels, and reduction of emissions of fossil fuel. Okay, identifying the difference between the production of fossil fuels and reduction of emission of fossil fuel is the main job of this production gap report. Okay, now this reduction has to happen in line with Paris Agreement. In line with Paris Agreement. So this is what this report is making sure. So in the Paris Agreement, we have created some contributions or some reduction targets. Every nation has created reduction targets to reduce their emissions. Okay, so on the basis of this reduction targets, the production is compared with the reduction, and what is the gap between it? That is the end result of the production gap report. So I hope you understood what this report is all about. Okay, as you can see, this comes despite 151 governments having pledged to achieve net zero emissions or no net emissions from 2050 to 2070. Okay, so let me explain what they are trying to tell. Now, according to the Paris Agreement, which was signed in 2015 in COP21, okay, every nation will give their targets, okay, which is known as nationally determined contributions, and this nationally determined contributions are voluntary in nature, and these targets are set for every 5 years. And after 5 years, we analyze how well have the countries done in reducing emissions or in achieving their targets. Okay. Now, this is what is called as global stocktake. So, global stocktake is basically how the performance of the countries regarding their contributions or regarding their voluntary declarations are taking place. Okay. So, this is also done once in 5 years. Okay. Now, along with global stocktake, you also have this report, production gap report. This also, it does an annual assessment of what is the production in each country regarding the fossil fuels, as well as how have they helped in reduction. Okay. So, just coming to this part. So, the production gap report, okay. So, as I told you, production, difference, reduction. Okay, the production of fossil fuel and the reduction of fossil fuel via emissions. Okay, the gap is what is this report is all about. So what they are trying to tell is the world will overshoot by 2030. Okay, the limit by twice. Okay, the limit will be overshot twice. Okay, so whatever was the limit, for example, if X was the emission by 2030 that all the nations agreed. Okay, if X was the the limit or the target which the nations had agreed. Okay, by 2030, the report says that we are going to emit almost 2x the times of what the target is. Okay, so we are going to overshoot by 2030 the fossil fuel limit. Okay, this is nothing but fossil fuel limit. Okay, almost 2x times. That is what this report tells. However, you don't have to get into the technicality of it. As I told you, one, you can use this in your answer about the production gap report. Okay, we have already overshot and we are going to overshot it by twice the limit. The next is you understood the concept. This concept can come directly within the prelims exam. Okay, so the production gap report is a report that is analyzing. Okay, it analyzes, again from the prelims perspective, it analyzes the emission. It analyzes the emission trends of 20 major fossil fuel producing countries. Okay, so it analyzes 20 major fossil fuel producing countries, which also includes India. Okay, that is one more perspective that you should know. Another perspective is who gives this report. Okay, again that can be asked directly in the exam. So this production gap report is produced by 3 institutes together. One is, it is produced by Stockholm Environmental Institute. That is one. The next is International Institute of Sustainable Development, and the third is UNEP. Okay, these are the 3 institutes that release this production gap report. Okay, again UNEP becomes very easy. So how UPSC will ask in the exam is production gap report is produced by Stockholm Environmental Institute. So when it gives this one name, then there are high chances of you to get confused. Okay, so I hope you understood this concept. Basically, again to summarize, production gap report is to understand the gap between the production of fossil fuel and the reduction of emissions via fossil fuel. The gap always shows that there is we are still overshooting our emission targets. All right, and the gap is almost 2x, which shows that we are going to overshoot by 2x within the year 2030. Okay. Now we also got a glimpse of what Paris Agreement is and how Paris Agreement works and how the targets are being done. And you also learned that it is an analysis, production gap report is an analysis of 20 major fossil fuel producing countries, which includes India. And it is produced by Stockholm Environmental Institute, International Institute of Sustainable Development, as well as UNEP together. Okay. So as I told you, climate news is constantly coming, constantly coming in the newspapers. The reason is because of the upcoming COP28. Okay. So hence you're going to see a lot of news about climate. All right. The next article again talks about the loss and damage fund. Okay. Leaving developing nations at new disadvantage. Okay. Now what is important is there are two terms. Now before I talk about this loss and damage fund, let me just give you a background. Again, this is to do with climate change. Okay. So regarding climate change, we had discussed about several funds. You had GEF, that is Global Environmental Facility. Then you had GCF, that is Global Climate Fund. So we have discussed these two in a video which you can see in the link. I have discussed this in 1st of November. The timestamp is somewhere between 1 minute and 44 seconds if I am not wrong. Okay. However, the 1st of November video, which you can see in the screen, you can click on that to see more about what is GCF, what is GEF, and what is this global stock take and different things. And I have also spoken very elaboratively about the climate finance scenario. Okay. So these are some things that you can see in this particular video link that you can see on the screen. However, now coming to this is a new fund, that is loss and damage fund. I'll be referring this as L&D fund. Okay. Now, before you understand what is this L&D fund, one thing that you should understand is what is the difference between adaptation and loss and damage. Okay. See, adaptation is basically a coping mechanism. It is a coping mechanism that purely focuses on survival. Okay. So adaptation in climate change is basically to overcome the changes in temperature, to overcome changes in weather. Okay. To adapt to these changes. That is what is, adaptation. It is basically a coping mechanism to improve our survival rates. Okay. Loss and damage is basically, it represents the irreversible damage that is caused by climate change. Okay. This irreversible damage cannot be avoided. It cannot be avoided. So what is this fund doing? This fund is providing a compensation. It is providing a compensation for all the irreversible damages that are being done by the climate change, which cannot be avoided. Okay. So this loss and damage fund is beyond just economic losses. Obviously, it includes economic losses as one of the dimension, but it is beyond. Okay, it is beyond economic losses. It involves human loss. It involves cultural loss. It involves social loss, as well as finally it involves environmental loss. Are you seeing this? So loss and damage is basically a very broader perspective of what is being lost due to climate change and its unavoidable consequences. Okay, we cannot adapt because we are already losing it or we have already lost it. So that is what is loss and damage. Okay, now this loss and damage fund basically stands on the idea of historical pollution. Historical pollution is the affluent countries who have created this condition of global warming because of their rampant emission of carbon dioxide. This is what is historical pollution. So because of this historical pollution, we are creating, okay, irreversible damage. And since the historical pollution is created by the affluent countries, they are responsible to provide for the loss and damage fund. That is the entire aspect of this L&D fund. So I hope you understood. Okay. Now let us talk about the evolution of L&D fund. Okay. So if you look at it, COP19. Okay, this was under UNFCCC and this happened in 2013 in Warsaw, Poland. Okay, so in COP19 they formally agreed to establish L&D fund. It was not yet established. They agreed to establish L&D fund. Okay, and they told that the main job of L&D fund is to provide financial and technical assistance. Financial and technical assistance to all the vulnerable nations. No, sorry. To all those nations that have incurred, not vulnerable, to all those nations that have incurred loss and damage. Okay, again to correct myself, they agreed to establish the L&D fund, and they told that it will provide financial and technical assistance to all those nations that have incurred loss and damage. As I told you, they are basically unavoidable. You cannot change them. So the fund mainly focuses on those things that are eventually going to be lost due to climate change. So this is what started in COP19 of 2013. Then came the COP25 in 2019. Okay, in COP25 2019. Okay, this was the president of this session was Chile, and the capital of Chile is Santiago. Hence, they created something called Santiago Network. Okay, this network is to help for loss and damage. Basically, as the name suggests, network is basically to connect vulnerable countries. You are connecting vulnerable countries to several institutes, several resources, as well as technical assistance groups. So this connection of vulnerable countries with institutes, resources and technical assistance groups is what you call as Santiago Network. Okay, so one in 2013 they agreed to establish the L&D fund. The second is, this was in 2013. After 6 years of negotiation, then there was something called Santiago Network. This is just a connection between vulnerable countries with other institutes, resources and technical assistance groups that can help them, okay, to create changes or to address climate risks. The third one is COP26. Okay, this happened in 2021 in Glasgow. Okay, this happened in Glasgow. Here they told there was something called Glasgow Dialogue. There was something called Glasgow Dialogue, and this dialogue told that this dialogue was basically on how to go about financing of L&D. Okay, however, this dialogue is just creating a process of how to go about financing L&D. There was still not any concrete conclusion that was done over L&D. Okay, finally the last year, COP27, that is 2022 in Egypt. Okay, they created what they call as L&D fund. L&D fund was set up, and they also created something called transition committee. Okay, this transition committee is basically in charge of figuring out how the funding mechanism will work. So 2022, which started in 2013, okay, it then saw some type of improvement in 2019, and then in 2021, and finally in 2022. So here it is COP19, COP25, COP26 and COP27. Okay, this is how you have to trace any issue that has happened within climate. So in COP19 they told there was just a formal agreement. Okay, there was just a formal agreement over L&D. Okay, then in COP25 there was Santiago Network. In COP26 there was Glasgow Dialogue, and finally L&D was set up. The L&D fund was set up, and there was a transition committee that was created to now discuss on this funding mechanism. Okay, so this is what is the overall aspect regarding loss and damage. Okay, I hope you got idea of what is this loss and damage and how the evolution has happened. So just to give you an update, the transition committee has created or has done 5 meetings, that is known as TC1, TC2, TC3 and TC5. Currently TC5 has spoken between the developed and developing nations, and it has agreed to create a fund that will be hosted by a fund that will be hosted by World Bank Financial Intermediary Fund. It will be hosted by World Bank under Financial Intermediary Fund. Okay, this will have an interim period of 4 years. Okay, so this is what in the TC5, the 5th meeting of the transition committee, this is what they are developing and the developed countries have agreed upon. Okay, so what happens in the future, we will get to know in the COP28 that is set to be starting in the, I think, this month. Okay, the next week of this month in UAE, in Dubai. Okay, so the point I'm trying to make is, whenever you come across such climatic initiatives or terms, it's very important for you to also know the evolution of those concepts. Okay, so one thing what I would advise you to please do is, from COP19, okay, from COP19, that is 2013, come to COP27, that is 2022. Okay, so please make sure that from year to year, what were all the important initiatives that was taken up during different UNFCCC's sessions. So from COP19 you can start and go up to COP27. Okay, from 2013 to 2022, because there are very high probabilities that UPSC will definitely not ask what has happened in COP28. They'll actually go or trace it backwards. Okay, now any student who feels that who can do this table can post this in the comment section, which will help our student community. Now usually what I have seen amongst the students as an attitude is, why should I do it? Let others do it. Let me just copy it from someone else. But what you will not understand is, you have to always believe in the process. Okay, let us assume that there is one student X who has taken the effort to create a table from COP19 to COP27, and from 2013 that person will trace to 2022 and create a very nice table of important initiatives that are taken. Now let us say that Y just goes through this table and reads it. Okay, though for Y as a student it may be an easy job to do it, this person has worked hard, but what you should understand is, the person who has worked hard will understand the process. That is, the person will use this process to be applied in other subjects as well as in other topics. So the person working hard will reap the benefits not only in this topic but in other subjects and topics as well. But the student who is taking it easily, since that person may by heart this particular topic, the person may find other topics very difficult. Okay, the reason is because that person has not developed what you call as process. Okay, hence whenever I give an assignment, always be proactive in doing it. All right, so however, it is up to you. I will not force you people, but if there is anyone who can trace from COP19 that has happened in Warsaw up to COP27, okay, that happened in Egypt, if you can trace what all the important activities, for example, if you take COP 21, which happened in 2015, this resulted in Paris Agreement. Okay, this also came up with International Solar Alliance. So like that, if you can trace from COP 19 to 27, what are the important initiatives that was brought, that itself will act as a very important data for you in your prelims exam. However, barring that, I hope you realized the issues of the day. All right, so as I told you, climate is becoming a very dominant topic, especially climate change. So please have a very keen eye over it. Okay, I hope the issues were helpful, and I hope you people are learning how to go about reading current affairs and how to trace it back to your static syllabus. Okay, so thank you so much for all the support and love, guys. Please, if you like this video, please share, like, share and subscribe it, and make sure that you make your friends aware about this initiative. Okay, so until tomorrow, I'll see you. Bye, guys.